So that's your intuitive senses. So I want to talk also about and help you to get back in touch with your um, your intuitive sense that you are very familiar with, the one that you go to a lot or mostly, your strong intuitive senses. Ideally, we would power up, boost, develop all our intuitive senses in order that different animals, you know, depending on what their preferred intuitive senses are, can tap into ours. So, for example, if you are very visual, but you haven't developed your smell and your taste, and an animal wants to share with you about, you know, smells that they want to talk about, or textures, or, you know, taste, etc. But if you haven't developed that, you're relying very much on visual, but they're wanting to share the taste, the texture. So it can be that you're waiting visually and they're like, oh, I'm sending you the smell, I'm sending you the taste. And so you can kind of miss it. So it's ideally you want to be working on your intuitive senses all the time. That to me is actually, if you get that, if every day or every other day you spend 10 to 15 minutes just getting in touch with your intuitive senses, really boosting it, really powering it up, I promise you, animal communication or communicating with animals, receiving information from them, really will be very easy and flowing. That aspect between you and the animal, we'll bring in the human element about that, you know, another time. But today it's just about you and this amazing practice, process, experience called communicating with animals. Okay. So yes, so here are perhaps the what I call the challenges of the intuitive senses that you are very strong with, or your go-to, or the one that you're very familiar with. I say challenges because I don't think that this aspect of intuitive senses is discussed um, anywhere that I have kind of read or looked at. But when I understand the challenges that it brings, it helps me to be more focused with my intention and the direction of the you know, the way that the communication is going. Okay, so let's work through a few of these. So if you are somebody who's very visual, so you know what I mean. Okay, if you're very visual, it's effortless for you to suddenly receive a whole host of images, and it can be fast, it can be colorful, it can be, I mean, it could be like almost sometimes watching 3 or 4 movies all at the same time. Who here is visual? Do you know? Yeah, if you know that you're really visual, let me know. Just write visual in it, and then I'll check in to see if you can relate to what I'm saying. So if you're really visuals, sometimes you can adopt the belief that unless something comes really quickly, unless sometimes you don't even dare ask anything. It's almost as if I'll get what I'm receiving, okay? And it can come fast, it can come like tons, it can be so many things. It's almost as if I imagine what can happen for you is that you're like, oh, okay, I see that. Oh, hang on, I see that. Oh, that's happening there. Oh my goodness, that's happening there. And you're almost like, but which bit is real? Which bit is the animals? Which bit is me? Which bit is, you know? And then you're trying to describe it. You're like writing 19 to the dozen, and it can be sometimes perhaps a little bit tricky as well to try and describe, you know, what you see. So so if you're very, very visual, that is your challenge. The way to harness your strength with being visual is to ask the animal very specifically to say, show me the visuals, the images that are relevant to the topic of the conversation that we're having, or to the question that I'm asking. So you're not limiting the animal. So you can start off freestyle. You can go, hey, guess what? You know, just share with me whatever is going on for you, anything you want to, tell me. And then they can go, woo, 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 woo. We got loads of visuals. Okay. And then when it gets to the point where you want to look at, a question or a topic of conversation that requires detail, and that requires for you to be clearer about the situation with the animal, then it's very important that you set the intention by stating out loud to the animal, or in your mind, say, right, okay, we've had great sharing of visuals, but because I'm really, really visual, can you just make sure that for this question I'm going to be asking you, only send me the visual that's relevant to the question, relevant to what it is you want to tell me. So then they can be more selective with what they want to share with you. So I'm just going to have a quick look at your comments here. Kirsty says, you sometimes can't really get what you see and feel as much as you would like to put it across for the animal's person. Yeah, visuals are not always, spot on. It can be shades or shadows, or yeah. So know that that's your challenge. If it comes fast, if it comes thick and fast, basically, you can direct the animal to say, can you send me visuals that are, okay, relevant or important to how you want to get your perspective across on this subject. Then you should experience almost like a slowing down of the visuals, or it's more specific. Okay. You can always ask the animal to give you, I always say, imagine you got a magnifying glass. If you think that the image is too small, or like a zoom, so you can kind of like zoom it down or zoom it up. Okay. So know that you're in control of almost like catching hold of an image that you want to find out more about. Remember, intuitive information, communication with the animals isn't like a fluke. If you get a piece of information and then you think, oh, I don't know where it's gone now, ask for it. Say to the animal, if it's really important to you, what I thought I just saw, but I didn't quite catch it, can you bring it more to my awareness? Really have that kind of, discussion with the animal, because go back to, the animal wants to tell you things. Animals need animal communicators, so you got to like remember that as well. Okay, so you can say to the animal, if you really need me to help you with this, then can you just bring in that image again, if it's important to you. If the image doesn't come back to you, then you can say, fair enough, it wasn't that important. So it's kind of learning not to worry about having information that just comes, and then, because you can check with the animal, you can say, was that relevant, was that important? Because if it is important, hold on to that information and make sure I get it. So remember, we're kind of shifting it the other way. The animal is communicating with you, and you're asking them to make sure that you get it. All right. So that's a challenge with people who are visual. Who here have a strong intuitive sense when it comes to physical sensations? For example, if you ask an animal, to kind of share with you what's going on with their body, do you get like tingling or numbness, or you can get like a jolt or some kind of impact, and it really is very real for you? Who gets that? So your challenge, if you have a very strong intuitive sense of physical sensation, can be that you might have in the past, and maybe a little bit now, maybe your concern that sometimes it can be so painful for you, or you can suddenly get like so hot, and it might make you like go red, and you might be a little bit embarrassed if you're in front of somebody, or you're almost like scared to ask them, can you show me where you have pain? Because, you worry about the fact that you could have this discomfort or pain hanging around sometimes, for a few hours after the session, or even days. So if your strong intuitive sense is a physical, Again, it's about harnessing it. Don't be afraid to receive those physical sensations, but really set the intention with the animal to say, you don't have to make it so strong for me. I'm just going to look at what Verina's written here. Physical sensations and emotional feelings, sometimes difficult to distinguish between the two. What well, you know this, all of you, is that all of it, all the intuitive senses work together. They don't work separately. I'm just kind of pulling them out. So you can have a visual and it will suddenly, bring in an emotion. You can have a physical sensation and that can bring in an emotion. So it's not about distinguishing it. When I ask you to kind of explain your process, it's not about being able to distinguish it to the point where you separate the two, but that you're aware it's physical as well as emotional. Okay. So yeah, so when you get the physical sensation, say to the animal, you don't have to send it to me so strongly. Now, I'll also add something that I've observed and I believe is true. And you can, again, help me to know whether this is the right observation or not. That at the beginning, for those of you who do have intuitive senses with physical sensations, because you may have some held belief that it's not real, the animal has to make it really strong for you. I think that's, quite a lot of people talk about like a pressure feeling in their third eye. And sometimes they can go, oh, it gives me a headache, and then why is it that every time I want to connect with an animal or connect with my intuition, I just get like this pain in my mind's eye. And I've learned and observed over the years when I've been helping people is that the minute you acknowledge that it's real, the minute that you acknowledge that you trust the information that the animal sends you, they don't have to almost like prove to you with a sensation so strong that you cannot deny it. Okay. So when it's really strong, either it's because initially you've needed that proof, but you haven't almost like updated the animals, generally by going, do you know what? I really trust now. So I can have it subtly. I can have it as a knowingness. Okay. If you don't want to feel it in your body, sometimes it's just, I guess it's a really good confirmation when you get it in your body because you cannot deny it. But if you don't want to have it to the extent that the animal is experiencing it, say that. So then you can do the scale of 1 to 5. I always use 1 to 5. I think 1 to 10 is too wide a range. You can say to the animal, okay, send me the physical sensation in my own body, but send it in the way that I can feel it, but I don't get, affected by it. And then the animal can tell you 1 to 5, 1 being low and 5 being high discomfort level. So then they can do it, that way with you to protect you. Because if you were going to be connecting with an animal and talking, say for half an hour about their physical issues, you really do not want to be experiencing all of that in half an hour, in that half-hour session. It'd be very hard to concentrate. So Judith says, this is such great teaching for me because I would have said I'm not very intuitive, but now I'm remembering extreme itchiness when connecting with the dog with irritated skin, a cat with nausea. Yeah. So remember that when you're experiencing it like full-blown physical sensations, check with yourself. Is that because at some level you need it to be almost like, so then it proves to you it's real? You do not have to do that. Go within and trust yourself, and then say to the animal, send it to me in a way that is very manageable for my body, and then you can tell me at what level your discomfort is, and then you've got the full picture. Okay, now, so kind of similar to the emotions is what Verena was talking about. Many of you are empaths, and the minute you can connect with an emotion of an animal, tears can flow, you can have anxiety, that the way they're feeling it. And exactly the same with the physical sensations. if you're feeling it so strongly that it's almost well, it is having an impact on your ability to say continue the communication. So say like you're really crying so much, and you feel like you can't continue with the communication. You want to really not have to have to do that. You can say to the animals, do you know what? I get it. In the past, I doubted. And so you had to send me that emotion in such a strong manner. So now I want to be able to connect with you about the emotion that you're experiencing. But at the same time, I want it so that it's manageable for me, so that I can continue the conversation with you. And then you can tell me again at the level of 1 to 5, how intense that emotion is for you. This is particularly important when you're talking to an animal about their past history, particularly with past history that involves trauma and abuse. So exactly, Judith, if you have sobbing, say to yourself, unless, okay, this has just come to me, sometimes an animal can help you to release your own emotions. But remember that it's all about intention. So you can set, we're going to talk about intention if we have time, because I'm aware that I always go on for longer. If you set the intention that the session is for the animal, then it will be just for the animal. If you set the intention that it's for yourself, you can do that. Animals, as you know, will help you. And if you set the intention that it can be either, that it can be help them to release, or it can help you to release, then that will happen. So intention is, quite key. Well, it is key to begin the session. So in terms of, we use the example of Judith, where you have the sobbing. So say if you were offering a communication with, the animal and the animal's person, and you were say sobbing uncontrollably, then it's not easy either for yourself or for the animal's person. But obviously showing emotion is important, because as the animal's person, witnessing the emotion that you're experiencing, that you're representing their animal, helps them to connect with how their animal is feeling. That is really valuable. But if you're sobbing to the point, or whereby your eyes are puffy and your nose is snotty, yeah, you might just say to the animal, I get it. It may be that in my belief system, I need that kind of outpouring to trust that that's the emotion you feel. But actually, while I'm relaying this to your person, just share that emotion with me, and then just use another intuitive sense to let me know the intensity of that. Okay, so Kirsty says, oh yes, I did cry for 15 minutes with my second ever AC with a horse, and I didn't know it was from the horse. It did show me the abuse. Yeah, now that's if you were doing a one-to-one, just you and the animal, and you weren't demonstrating this with the animal's person, then that's obviously understandable. Check with the animal when you were crying for that 15 minutes. Did they need you to release it for them, or could you help them to release it, right? Or did they also tap into something that you recognize, and it helped you to resonate with the horse, and then you released it? Okay, yeah. So Kirsty, because it was a one-to-one, you knew it was fine. But then I just want to check that you don't therefore almost like hold a concern or a worry that this could happen if it was with the animal's person. And then, so remember, you are able to say to the animal, when I'm with your person and I'm relaying it, ideally I wouldn't be crying for 15 minutes. Okay. And then that's how you check with the animal about the level of intensity of their emotion. They can use other intuitive senses to tell you about it as well. Okay, so that's physical sensation, there's emotions. Right now we're going to go to knowing, sense of knowing. These are like just statements that come into your head, thoughts, words that bang, bang, bang. It's almost like no argument. Okay. And if your strong sense is with knowingness, you might feel a little bit frustrated that it's like, gosh, it's a bit, unnerving, because it feels like when I say it, it's either going to be right or it's going to be wrong. So when it's right, it's like, yes. But when it's wrong, it's like, oh, so it feels really risky. So now knowing is, I always have observed this and I've communicated with animals about this. Knowing is a shortcut for animals to us. They love knowingness when there's a crisis, when they want a very quick answer, or they want a quick decision. However, if you only depend on knowing, you don't get the full picture. So this is where you hear me really bang on about expand, 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 particularly those of you who have knowingness. Don't just go, yep, he showed me a sofa, a brown sofa. Expand. Say to yourself, okay, so my knowingness is that he loves to lie on a brown sofa. Go more into it. Explore. Just says, what's the emotion when you show me the brown sofa? What's the physical sensation when you show me the brown sofa, or when you tell me about the brown sofa? Because by expanding that, you are also confirming that the knowing information that you received is exactly what the animal wants to talk about. Just that the animal has given it to you almost like in a package. The knowingness, if you haven't developed your emotional intuitive senses, if you haven't developed your physical sensations, you will only got the knowing. And the animal, as far as they're concerned, they've sent you the whole package, right? The knowing with the physical, with the visual, like where it's situated, blah, blah, blah. So if you are knowing, you've become so familiar with knowing that you haven't actually, and then you say things like, I'm not visual, and I'm not this, and I'm not emotional, therefore when you say you're not all those things, you've put a block. So you say, knowingness is going to help me to expand and develop my other intuitive senses, because it makes me curious. Where did that information come from? Okay, so I hope that brown sofa example is useful for you. Then we go to sound, smell, and taste. These three intuitive senses, I don't think us as humans have really put enough effort and time into developing those intuitive senses, because I guess we don't really need it. But remember, animals communicating with us, sound, smell, and taste, it's so important to them. They love sharing about sound, smell, and taste, particularly smell and taste. So I would say it's more a sense that I would love for everybody to really focus on developing and deepening and expanding, because smell and taste are also very closely related to emotions, and sound is also almost like, to me, is on par with visual. If most, a lot of us are auditory, especially if you notice this, that's what I've been told once, that if you tend to kind of tilt your head when somebody's talking to you, it means you're auditory. So how many of you here would be able to say you are strong with your sound, smell, and taste intuitive sense? So Kirsty says, sound, yes, but just expanding now on smell and taste. Ray says, better at sound and smell and taste. Okay. Margaret says, taste is one I've hung back on exploring. You brought up a good point. So, we're talking about challenges at the moment. Again, remember, it's the same with the physical sensations, same with the emotions. You don't have to experience it full blown, right? It's just so that the animal knows that you've developed those senses so that they can describe, you know, their experience or their perspective, so that you get to feel it with them, particularly if you're checking about their teeth, their gums, their jaws, you know, texture of food. Sometimes they might have bitten something and swallowed something that shouldn't be right. So you want all of that to be able to be, you know, or sometimes they can, you know, lose their sense of smell. Or if you're talking to a dog that just, you know, just can't be on a, it just keeps pulling on a leash, really get in touch with the sense of smell, and you can really demonstrate to their person how that, you know, how that affects them. And being on a leash can be really frustrating for them. So same with the animals, you can say, hey, guess what, you know, send me smell, send me taste, so that I can share with you, you know, the experience that you're going through. But you don't have to send it to me like full blown. If you are afraid of, you know, like, oh, yucky smells, that could be really fantastic for the dog, say, just give me a little whiff. It's usually really subtle. It's usually incredibly subtle. You almost get something and you go, that's hard to describe, but and then you can ask them for a word to describe it. I love this particular memory of somebody saying, oh, I didn't get a smell. I really tried, because she was working to expand her animal, her intuitive sense of smell, and asked the animal to send her something, and but she got the word manure instead. So the animal was actually being really kind to her. He didn't actually send her the smell of manure, but sent the word. Okay, so you can get it in word. So Lauren says, I've had taste a couple of times. Pretty cool. Okay, so Angela says, taste never, I think. Okay, well, it's subtle. The way to really power up your sense of taste is right here, right now. Imagine you've just sliced a lemon. What's happening? Imagine that you're smelling the lemon. Imagine you're drinking the pure lemon juice. Already I am having a reaction, you know. So it's allowing yourself to really, you know, make it that real. Okay, so by just really getting that, waking up your intuitive sense of smell and your taste, animals will know that you are able to receive, you know, that information about it. Okay, right, so that's our intuitive senses.